The sound of splintering wood isn't the sort of thing a man expects to hear before he's even had his morning coffee. But there it was, again, my ranch gate groaning and cracking like an old soldier on his last march. And the cause? Cheryl's shiny black Escalade barreling straight through it as if she owned the place. To her, my land wasn't property. It wasn't private. It was simply a shortcut. She didn't wave, didn't ask, didn't even slow down. She just plowed on through, sunglasses on, head high, like some self-crowned queen of the suburbs. The first time, I thought it had to be an accident. A wrong turn, maybe her GPS went haywire. The second time, I figured she was testing me. By the third, I knew she was daring me. And let me tell you, I'm not the kind of man who takes kindly to dares, especially not on my own dirt. What Cheryl didn't realize was that while she was busy playing president of her little neighborhood association, I was quietly preparing something she'd never see coming. But before I get ahead of myself, let me set the stage. When I bought this ranch, I pictured quiet mornings. Wide skies painted with sunrise, cattle grazing along the pasture, and a wooden gate that swung shut each evening with a heavy, satisfying thud. After 3 decades of construction work, dust in my lungs, knees shot from ladders, and supervisors nitpicking about mailbox colors, I wanted nothing more than peace. This land was supposed to be my freedom. On paper, I was safe. My ranch sat just beyond the boundary of Silver Creek Estates, a sprawling HOA-run subdivision with more rules than the state constitution. Lucky for me, my property wasn't under their jurisdiction. I didn't pay their dues, didn't answer to their board, and certainly didn't take orders from their president. The line was clear. My cedar-framed gate, heavy iron hinges and all, marked the border. A line in the sand. Built with my own 2 hands, and I was damn proud of it. It wasn't even a month before I met her, Cheryl. Perfectly styled blonde bob, oversized designer shades, and an SUV so new it probably still smelled like the dealership. She slowed down just enough to roll her window halfway, flashing me a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Lovely spot you've got here," she said. "Thanks," I replied. And before I could say another word, she pressed the gas and slammed straight through my closed gate. The hinges screamed. Cedar scraped across gravel, and by the time I blinked, she was halfway across my pasture, kicking up dust like she was late to her own coronation. I just stood there, dumbfounded. At first I told myself maybe she was lost. Maybe her GPS rerouted her down my drive. But then I caught that half smile in her rearview mirror as she waved. A dismissive, mocking wave. No, this wasn't a mistake. That night I spent hours repairing the gate, reinforcing hinges, resetting posts deeper into the soil, muttering curses under my breath the whole time. I chalked it up to bad manners and prayed it wouldn't happen again. But of course it did. A week later, same scene. The rumble of her Escalade, the dust cloud, the crash of wood. She didn't slow. She didn't stop. She blasted through like she was storming Normandy. I ran out onto the porch, waving my arms. "Hey, that's private property," I yelled. Her response? A laugh. She leaned out the window, one manicured hand flicking in the breeze. "Community easement," she shouted before vanishing down my drive. Community easement. Those 2 words made my blood boil. I knew my deed backward and forward. There was no easement, no shared road, no right-of-way, but she said it like it was gospel truth. That night, when I went to the feed store for supplies, a couple of old-timers shook their heads when I mentioned her. "You got Cheryl blasting through your land already?" one asked, spitting sunflower seeds into a cup. "Afraid so," I muttered. "Good luck," the other said, chuckling bitterly. "She runs that HOA like it's her personal kingdom. Folks have been battling her for years. Best thing you can do? Stay out of her way. Stay out of her way. Let her tear down my gate every week like she owned it. Not on my land. Not in this lifetime." The third time it happened, I was ready. I was stacking firewood by the barn when I heard the all-too-familiar crunch of gravel and the low growl of that Escalade's engine. I dropped the logs, wiped my hands on my jeans, and marched toward the gate. There she was, Cheryl, revving her SUV right in front of my entrance like she owned the place. She rolled down her window, smirking. "You really ought to keep this gate open," she said. "This is my gate," I shot back. "My property. You're trespassing." She raised her chin, lips curling like she'd just bitten into something sour. "Don't be so selfish. This road saves me 10 minutes every morning. That's called community spirit." Community spirit? I almost laughed. Lady, that wasn't spirit. It was trespassing. You're damaging my property, I barked. Her smirk hardened. You're new here. Maybe you don't understand. The Silver Creek Association sets the rules. You're not above them. That was the first time I heard the word association thrown at me like it was some divine right. Like Cheryl wore a crown just because she chaired a board of nosy neighbors. I told her to turn around. She didn't. Instead, she floored it. Dust sprayed my boots as she barreled through. I fixed the gate again that night, but it wasn't just cedar and hinges anymore. It was a matter of principle. Every splinter felt like an insult. Every dent, her mocking laugh in my face, and it didn't stop with her. The worst part. Other board members began following her lead. A maroon minivan with a Silver Creek Association decal. A shiny sedan with a vanity plate that read, Ho Pride. They paraded through my land like it was some kind of community driveway, waving at each other as if I were the hired help. Then came the letter. I found an envelope tucked neatly into my mailbox one afternoon. Official letterhead, bold font. My stomach dropped as I read, Dear Resident, you are in violation of Silver Creek standards for maintaining unsightly structures. The ranch gate at the entrance of your property does not conform to community aesthetics. Please remove it immediately or face daily fines. I nearly doubled over laughing. I wasn't even in their HOA. My deed was clear. My property was separate, paid off, and completely outside their jurisdiction. Yet here they were, ordering me to tear down the very gate they kept destroying. Just to be sure, I drove down to the county clerk's office. I wanted everything airtight. And sure enough, the records backed me up. No easements, no association oversight, nothing. My land was mine, still. That letter felt like a warning shot. Cheryl wasn't just some entitled neighbor cutting corners anymore. She was starting a war. And if there's one thing I learned after 30 years of building homes, barns and fences, it's this. Every structure is only as strong as the man willing to stand behind it. Cheryl thought she could scare me with paperwork and SUVs. She had no idea who she was dealing with. By the time Cheryl tried it a third time, I wasn't surprised. I was waiting. That morning, I parked myself on the tailgate of my old Chevy pickup, sipping black coffee while the sun climbed over the hills. I parked the truck just inside the gate, blocking the path. If she wanted her shortcut, she'd have to face me. Didn't take long. Dust rose on the horizon, and sure enough, her Escalade came barreling down like a charging bull. She slowed when she spotted my truck, but she didn't stop. No. She rolled her window down, shades glinting, that smug grin plastered on her face. You're wasting your time, she called out. This road belongs to everyone. I kept my voice even. No, ma'am. This road belongs to me. Deed says so. Her sunglasses hid her eyes, but I could see her jaw clench. You can't own land that blocks community access. That's against the law. I nearly choked on my coffee. Against the law. I'd been through county records twice. She was bluffing. But the way she said it, you'd think she'd written the law herself. I suggest you turn around, I told her. Her smirk widened. And I suggest you move your truck. We stared at each other, the gravel road stretching silent between us. Finally she huffed, yanked the wheel and reversed, tires spitting dust as she tore off. For a moment I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd won. But the very next day, I came home to find my gate flattened. Posts splintered, hinges twisted like paper clips. Fresh tire tracks slicing across my pasture. She hadn't backed down. She'd escalated, and now she wasn't alone. That week I spotted more vehicles following her lead. A maroon minivan with Silver Creek Strong plastered on the back window. A silver sedan with the association treasurer's name on the license plate frame. One after another, they drove across my land like it was deeded to them personally. This wasn't random. It was coordinated. Cheryl wasn't just taking a shortcut anymore. She was opening a highway. Still, I tried reason. Don't ask me why. I marched into the Silver Creek Association office, a brick building that looked more like a law firm than a neighborhood clubhouse. Inside, behind a polished desk stacked with binders, sat Cheryl. She looked up from her papers like I'd tracked mud onto her marble floors. We need to talk, I said firmly. Oh, good, she replied sweetly. You're here about your fines. My what? She slid a paper across the desk. A list of so-called violations, unapproved structures, unkempt land, failure to comply with community easements. Each line had a dollar amount beside it, adding up to nearly $3,000. I laughed bitterly. I'm not even in your association. Her tone sharpened. Don't play games. Every property here falls under Silver Creek standards. That's a lie, and you know it. The county clerk confirmed I'm outside your boundary lines. She leaned back in her chair, tapping manicured nails on the armrest. Boundaries are flexible when community welfare is at stake. Boundaries are legal, I shot back. And mine aren't flexible. Her lips tightened. You'll regret this stubbornness. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about a shortcut anymore. This was a war of attrition. She'd use fines, pressure, intimidation, whatever it took, to grind me down. And she had her foot soldiers. Later that week, while I was fixing fence posts, one of her board members marched up with a clipboard in hand. A wiry man with a sharp nose and a sharper attitude. Sir, he announced, you can't keep rebuilding this gate. The association has voted. The road stays open. I wiped the sweat from my forehead. Funny, I don't remember voting in your association. Probably because I'm not in it. He scribbled something on his clipboard. Failure to comply will result in additional penalties. I let out a humorless laugh. You'll need more than a clipboard to scare me. Pal. He stomped off, muttering, Cheryl will handle you, and handle me. She did. One night around midnight, I was jolted awake by the sound of splintering wood. I grabbed my flashlight and stormed outside. There it was again, my gate demolished. And in the distance, Cheryl's Escalade taillights shrinking into the night. No excuses. No waving, just pure defiance. I stood there in the dark, fists clenched, staring at the wreckage. My cedar planks scattered like matchsticks. My hard work stomped into the dirt. My ranch didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt invaded, and that was the night irritation hardened into resolve. This wasn't just about a gate. It was about ownership, respect, and whether a man's land truly belonged to him when someone else decided they had a right to it. And Cheryl? She was about to find out what happens when you push a man too far. By now, I'd had enough. Every time I fixed that gate, Cheryl came back with her Escalade, smashing it to pieces like it was her personal game. And worse, she'd dragged other HOA board members into it. My land had turned into their shortcut, and they acted like I was just some ranch hand standing in their way. The night she destroyed it for the 4th time, something inside me snapped. I wasn't mad anymore. I was done. If she wanted a fight, she was going to get one. See, I'd spent over 30 years as a builder. I knew how to make things that lasted. Houses that stood through hurricanes. Barns that didn't flinch in tornado winds. Gates that weren't just fences but fortresses. If I could build that, I sure as hell could build something that Cheryl couldn't ram her way through. So that's exactly what I decided to do. This wasn't going to be just another wooden gate. This was going to be a trap. I started with steel. Not that cheap stuff you buy at a home store, but real heavy beams I'd salvaged years back from a demolition job. They'd been sitting behind my barn, gathering rust, waiting for a purpose. Now they had one. Next, the posts. Instead of cedar, I drilled down deep, 6 feet into the ground, and set steel posts in concrete, reinforced with rebar. Each post could take thousands of pounds of force. I made sure of it. I welded the frame, crossbars, and supports until it was less of a gate and more of a fortress wall. Then, to keep up appearances, I layered the front with thick cedar planks. From the road, it still looked like the same old wooden gate Cheryl had smashed before. But hidden inside was a wall of steel, and I wasn't done yet. See, it wasn't enough to stop her SUV. I wanted to end this shortcut once and for all. So I added a little extra. Right behind the gate, I dug shallow trenches. Into those I set steel spikes, tire-popping teeth hidden under gravel. If anyone tried to ram through again, their tires would shred like paper. This wasn't just a gate anymore. This was justice with hinges. I worked for days. Long hours, sweat dripping down my back, sparks flying from the welder. My dogs lay nearby, watching quietly like they knew their master was preparing for battle. A couple neighbors slowed down on the main road, curious. Fixing that gate again? One asked. Not fixing, I replied with a grin. Upgrading. Word got around, of course. Cheryl drove by one afternoon, parking just outside the boundary line. She sat there in her Escalade, engine running, watching me. After a few minutes, she rolled her window down. You really think you can stop me? She sneered. I didn't even look up from my work. No, but I can stop you from trespassing. She laughed, sharp and brittle. We'll see. The board meets tomorrow. We'll be filing an injunction. Good luck with that, I muttered. Sparks flying as I welded another seam. She tore off in a cloud of dust. Furious. That night, an old buddy of mine, Hank, a rancher from a few miles down the road, stopped by. He watched me work, shook his head, and said, "You know you're playing with fire, right?" "I know," I replied. "But if I don't stop her now, she'll never stop." He studied me for a moment, then chuckled. "Hell, I like your style. Need a hand?" Together we finished the last reinforcements, bolting, welding, testing. When we finally stepped back, sweat-soaked and tired, the gate stood tall. On the outside, it looked like the same old wooden barrier Cheryl thought she could smash. But inside, it was a steel wall. "Looks just like the old one," Hank said, grinning. I shook my head. Not even close. By the end of that week, my trap was ready. The gate swung smoothly, locked into steel brackets, trenches disguised perfectly with gravel. The spikes invisible unless you knew where to look. To the untrained eye, it was just another gate. To me, it was the end of Cheryl's little joyrides. That evening, I sat on my porch, dogs at my feet, staring at the finished work as the sun went down. My hands were blistered, my back ached, but my heart was steady. For weeks, Cheryl had treated me like I was nothing. Like my land wasn't mine. Like I was just some pushover, but I wasn't. Every bully eventually hits a wall they can't knock down. And the next time Cheryl came through, she was going to find out exactly what kind of wall I'd built. It didn't take long. By Saturday afternoon, I was sitting on my porch, sipping coffee, when I heard it. The low rumble of an engine I'd come to know too well. Cheryl's Escalade. I set my cup down, leaned back in my chair, and waited. Over the hill she came. Hair perfect, oversized sunglasses, jaw locked tight with that smug look she always wore. And of course she wasn't alone. Behind her rolled two other cars, the treasurer's maroon minivan and another board member's silver sedan. A full convoy of arrogance. They weren't slowing down. If anything, Cheryl pressed the gas harder. For her, smashing through my gate wasn't just about saving 10 minutes. It was about power. It was her way of saying, "I run this place and nobody tells me no." But today, that little game was about to end. Her SUV closed the distance fast. Dust flew, tires chewed the gravel. I gripped the arm of my chair, steady, waiting for the moment. Then it came. Her bumper slammed into the gate, but instead of splintering like before, the gate held. The steel core refused to move. The sound was like a shotgun blast, metal against metal, echoing across the ranch. Her Escalade jolted violently. The front end crumpled like a soda can, airbags exploding with a puff of white smoke. Tires screeched, rubber burning as momentum carried her forward, straight into the trap. Pop, pop, pop. The hidden spikes did their work, tearing her tires to shreds. In seconds, her SUV sagged, hissing and grinding as it came to a dead stop, pinned against my gate like a bug caught on glass. Behind her, the convoy scrambled. The minivan swerved into the ditch, fishtailing before stalling out. The sedan braked hard, horn blaring, barely avoiding a pileup. Then came silence. Dust hung in the air, the smell of burnt rubber mixing with the sharp tang of steel. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Cheryl's door flew open. She stumbled out, coughing from the airbag dust, her face twisted with rage. She pointed straight at me, screaming, "What have you done?" I stayed seated on the porch, calm as a Sunday preacher. My dogs barked at her but didn't move from my side. "What I've done," I called back, "is stop you from trespassing." Her voice went shrill. "This is illegal. You put lives at risk." I stood slowly, walking down the steps toward the wreck. Up close, it was even uglier. Her Escalade's front end crushed, fluids leaking onto the gravel, tires shredded to ribbons. "You were warned," I said evenly, over and over. "You chose this." She stomped her heel into the dirt, trembling. "You're finished. The association will bury you in lawsuits." I raised an eyebrow, pulled a small device from my pocket, and pointed to the gateposts. "I wouldn't count on that. Cameras, Cheryl. Every time you smashed through, every trespass, every fake fine, it's all on tape." Her face went pale, and as if on cue, neighbors began gathering along the road, phones out, recording. Some laughed. One man muttered just loud enough, "Looks like the Queen lost her crown." Laughter rippled through the crowd. The HOA treasurer crawled out of his minivan, limping, still clutching his clipboard like it was a shield. The other board member just sat in his car, face buried in his hands. Cheryl spun on the neighbors, shouting, "Stop laughing. This is serious. He could have killed us." But the more she screamed, the harder they laughed. For once, the so-called Queen of Silver Creek wasn't feared. She was humiliated. Then the sheriff pulled up, lights flashing. He stepped out, surveying the wreck with raised eyebrows. "What in the blazes happened here?" he asked. Cheryl ran toward him, wailing like a child. "He set a trap. He sabotaged the road. He could have killed us." The sheriff turned to me. "That true?" I shook my head. "This isn't a community road. It's my property. She's been trespassing for weeks." I reinforced my gate. "The cameras caught everything." The sheriff narrowed his eyes, nodding slowly. "If that's the case, looks like she's the one in trouble." The crowd cheered. Phones recorded every word. Cheryl froze, eyes darting between me, the sheriff, and the neighbors. For once, she had no comeback. I walked up to her SUV, tapped the mangled hood, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Shortcuts closed." "Cheryl." The road erupted in laughter. Whistles, applause. Cheryl covered her face, screaming curses as she climbed back into her ruined Escalade. Tow trucks arrived to haul away the wrecks. The sheriff told me I'd be in touch, but from the looks of it, I was in the clear, and as the dust finally settled, I felt something I hadn't in weeks. Peace, because Cheryl had finally learned the hard way. Not every gate can be broken. Some gates fight back. Now, if you think that crash ended things, you don't know Cheryl. Even with her Escalade wrecked, tires shredded, and half the neighborhood laughing at her, she wasn't done. If anything, the humiliation only made her more dangerous. The very next morning, I found another envelope in my mailbox. This one was thick, stamped with official-looking seals. Inside was a stack of papers. At the top, it read, "Notice of legal action. According to Cheryl and her HOA board, I was being sued for reckless endangerment, property damage, and obstructing a community easement. They demanded I tear down my gate permanently, pay for Cheryl's SUV repairs, and, get this, cover their emotional distress." I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. But the truth? It also made my blood boil. Here I was, months of trespassing and damage done to me, and somehow they were trying to flip it like I was the criminal. I didn't waste any time. I drove straight into town and sat down with an attorney. Her name was Martha, sharp as a blade, practiced property law longer than Cheryl had been bossing around neighbors. She flipped through the papers, smirked, and said, "Classic HOA power play. They don't have jurisdiction over your land, but they're hoping you'll fold." "Well, folding isn't in my vocabulary," I told her. "Good," she said with a grin, "because this is going to be fun." Within a week, Martha filed a countersuit. Trespassing, destruction of property, harassment, fraud through fake fines. And thanks to my cameras, we had every bit of proof we needed. Cheryl smashing through the gate, her board members following her lead. Even the crash itself, all caught on video. The moment Cheryl realized I wasn't backing down, she doubled down. A few days later, I came home to find her and her board members standing outside my gate with clipboards, shouting for anyone who'd listen. "This man is dangerous," one yelled. "He set a trap that could have killed children," another cried. "Unsafe structures everywhere," Cheryl screamed, waving papers like a politician at a rally. Neighbors gathered. But this time, the crowd wasn't on her side. Some shook their heads. Others filmed her tantrum. One man shouted, "We're tired of the HOA bullying us." Another added, "About time somebody stood up to you, Cheryl." Her face went pale, but she didn't back down. She shrieked, "Lies! All lies!" But the cracks in her kingdom were showing. Then came the court date. Cheryl strutted in like she owned the place. Bright red suit, board members trailing behind her like nervous puppies. She smiled at people like she was running for office. When the judge called the case, Cheryl's lawyer went first. He gave a dramatic speech about how I was some unhinged loner who had set a booby-trapped gate that endangered the entire community. They painted me like I was the villain. Then Martha stood, calm, precise, deadly. "Your Honor," she began, "the evidence will show my client's land lies outside of the HOA's jurisdiction. These fines and claims are fraudulent. And as for endangerment, the only danger here came from the reckless trespassing of the HOA president and her board." Then she clicked a remote. The courtroom screens lit up. Video footage rolled. Cheryl's SUV smashing into the gate, her tires popping on the spikes, neighbors laughing in the background. Then the earlier clips, every single time she rammed through, every time she mocked me, every time she yelled, "Community easement." By the end, the courtroom was buzzing. Even the judge raised an eyebrow. When Cheryl herself was called to testify, she broke down. At one point, she shouted, "I am the president." "He can't defy me!" "He can't defy the association." The judge slammed his gavel. "This is a court of law, not your board meeting." "Sit down." Her credibility crumbled. The ruling came swift. The court dismissed the HOA's claims completely. Instead, they ordered the HOA to pay damages for trespassing and property destruction. Cheryl herself was fined for harassment and reckless driving. And the kicker? All the footage became part of the public record. Didn't take long before clips started popping up online. One video went viral. Cheryl's Escalade slamming into my gate, slowed down with dramatic music. Captions reading, "You shall not pass." Another one was titled, "HOA President versus Gate of Justice." The internet had a field day. Back in Silver Creek, the fallout was brutal. Neighbors who'd kept quiet for years finally spoke up. Story after story came out. Bogus fines, threats, intimidation. One by one, board members resigned, not wanting to sink with Cheryl's ship. By the end of the month, the Silver Creek HOA was in shambles. Its funds drained by legal fees, its reputation destroyed, and Cheryl, she was left standing alone, her power gone, her influence shattered. And me? I sat on my porch one evening, sipping coffee, watching the sun set behind my indestructible gate. For the first time in a long time, the ranch was quiet, and it tasted like victory. After the dust of the courtroom settled, Silver Creek felt like a whole different place. For the first time since I'd moved here, my mornings were peaceful. No rumble of Cheryl's Escalade. No line of HOA cars treating my land like their own freeway. Just the wind in the grass, my horses chewing hay, and the creak of my porch chair as I sipped my coffee. It was the peace I'd dreamed of when I bought this land. But deep down, I knew Cheryl. Silence didn't mean surrender. It meant she was licking her wounds. Weeks passed, though, and the most I saw of her was a blur of blonde hair slipping into her house, avoiding the neighbors' eyes. Word spread fast. Her downfall was the talk of Silver Creek. The once untouchable HOA president had become a cautionary tale. Her name carried more scorn than respect. I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd finally learned her lesson. Then one afternoon, I got a certified letter in the mail. From Cheryl. This time she was offering a settlement. She wanted me to remove my menacing gate and allow limited community passage. She dressed it up with sweet words, talk of moving forward and healing divisions. I couldn't help but laugh. Healing divisions? No, this wasn't about peace. This was just another attempt to claw back control, so I wrote her a short reply. 1 page, 2 sentences, there is no community easement. I own the road, and I have the deed to prove it. See, here's the twist. All this time, Cheryl was screaming about community rights. I'd been quietly double-checking county records. Not only was my ranch outside the HOA's control, but the road she loved so much. The shortcut, she swore, was for the community. It was mine, deeded to me. Paid for in full. She and her board hadn't just been trespassing. They'd been trespassing on my private road. When Cheryl got my letter, she stormed over one last time, waving it like a flag. "This is fraud," she screamed. "You can't own that road, it's for the community." I leaned against my porch railing, calm as ever. "Check the county records, Cheryl. The deed's in my name. Always has been." Her face twisted in shock. She sputtered, but no words came out. Neighbors had gathered again, phones out, recording every second. Finally, she let out one last scream, stomped her heel into the dirt, and stormed off, for good. From that day forward, Cheryl never set foot on my road again. The HOA, stripped of its tyrant leader, limped along quietly. The few members left were more worried about trimming lawns than bullying ranchers. And me? My ranch finally became the sanctuary I'd imagined. That gate stood tall, not just as a barrier of wood and steel, but as a reminder. A reminder that I'd built something strong, stood my ground, and let the truth do the rest. Looking back, I realized this story was never just about a gate, or an SUV, or even a woman named Cheryl. It was about boundaries, and the courage it takes to defend them. Life will always have people like Cheryl, folks who think the rules don't apply to them. Folks who laugh at your warnings, push past your lines, and act like your no means nothing. They'll test you. They'll push you. And sooner or later, you'll face a choice. Give in or build stronger. I chose to build. And that's the lesson I'll leave you with. In life, your gate might not be wood and steel. It might be your time, your energy, your dignity, your peace of mind. Whatever it is, don't let anyone trample it just because they think they can. Set your boundaries. Reinforce them. And when someone refuses to respect them, don't back down. Because at the end of the day, respect isn't given. It's earned. And sometimes you've got to demand it. So let me ask you this. What's the gate in your life that you need to protect? Drop your answer in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Because trust me, there are plenty more HOA battles, entitled neighbor dramas, and sweet stories of revenge still to come.